Hello everyone, this is In-Game Arts with a little boxing with an offline product game review. This is Ratchet Clank, the movie game for the PlayStation 4, but this is being played and tested on my PlayStation 5. Now the on-disc version, it just says it's the base vanilla version of the game, so the on-disc version is 1.0. But sadly there was an update available. This update size was 135 megabytes big and will take you to version 1.09 since the time I did this video. Now this update just said bug fixes. I can't really say what it fixed or what it did. But like always, I did play the game completely offline with an unregistered account. Now I didn't experience any massive game-breaking bugs or issues. But I want to point out that I did play the game completely with an unregistered account, and I was still unlocking trophies. So that's really good for trophy hunters out there. Now, like I said, I did play the entire game, and I didn't experience any massive brain-breaking bugs or issues. I did have two minor hiccups, and I will get into that in a bit. But I want to point out that this is Ratchet & Clank, the reimagined, reboot, remake. I don't really know how you want to look at it, so I just really call it the Ratchet & Clank the movie game, where it's more in ties of the movie that came out and a correlation with that. And you can really see in some of the design points of the game that it was really trying to just fit itself between the movie. Now, you don't necessarily have to play this game, as the newest one, Rift Apart, follows more of the original trilogy set that came out like on PlayStation 3. So oddly enough, that even though if you play this game, it doesn't really align itself too much well with the newer one that came on PS5, A Rift Apart. But that doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't play this. Now, some people hate this version, and some people love it just because of it. And it's kind of hard for me to say. There are some good signs and downsides about Ratchet & Clank, the movie game. Is that it doesn't have the same kind of music, and certain atmospheres are a little bit different, but overall the gameplay, the style, the graphics, the overall mechanics of the game are just phenomenal. And the game played phenomenally well on my PlayStation 5. Now the game did run at 30 frames per second. I never noticed never once did it dip down below 30, and which I can't really remember PlayStation 4 when I played it, because it's actually been 7 years since I played this game. So it's quite interesting to come back to it. I just had a blast coming back and playing Ratchet & Clank. Now the game isn't too hard. I did immediately jump on the highest difficulty, and at no point was this game a struggle for me, but it was still extremely fun playing on the highest difficulty. And it works with your basic Ratchet & Clank mechanics, where you play as Ratchet and you go through the game, get more weapons, and more times you use that weapon, it upgrades that weapon. You can put points in that weapon to make it better. It has its own tree between every weapon. And once you finally max out the weapon, it kind of does a special alteration. It gets a new special ability, as well as Ratchet gets a little bit more experience himself, which increases his maximum health. It's a nice gameplay progression loop where you're constantly wanting to use newer weapons to constantly upgrade these weapons and try to balance out your weapons and using your resources well, in terms of when you run out of ammo, you have a backup weapon that you like. And it's generally try to find your playstyle and what you enjoy. And overall, it works great. It's just, even though the mechanics never really change, it never gets boring. It's still phenomenal to this day. And the Ratchet & Clank, the game movie, it doesn't stray too far from it. It's still enjoyable. The only thing that it was a hiccup was that you could tell they were trying to shoehorn the movie parts and the game parts of the game. And certain cutscenes and certain dialogue, certain moments, switching between them can be a little jarring at times. So you can see it doesn't really fit sometimes the animations and where you end up, and just certain other things seem a little sped up because they're trying to fit into the movie or trying to explain itself between the movie. It just doesn't make too much sense at certain moments. It doesn't necessarily break the game. It doesn't make the game bad. It's just you can notice it compared to the original, though I have not played the original in a very long time, so I did watch a recap of the original, and I do admit the story in the movie remake here of the Ratchet & Clank, it has a better story. I'm not going to argue with that. It's a little bit more dynamic drama, a lot more immersive in terms of how everything plays out, so it is an overall better story, and since the gameplay and mechanics work a lot better, it is a better game compared to the original one in terms of mechanics. But there are some things that are great about the original that are still charm me to this day, and it does bum me out that you can only really play the original Ratchet & Clanks still to this day either on the PlayStation 2 or on PS3, or you have to do a cloud streaming kind of style on PlayStation 4 and 5. That really needs to be fixed. The original games really do need another re-release physically, or some form of way to play it more authentically instead of streaming. But even so, it's still worth your time to play this game. Like I said, I had a blast. I had no issues. The only two big bug issues I had was that when I was doing the hoverboard race, the original first one, there was a little bit of a bug where the rings you jump through to give you a boost wouldn't respawn. Once I jumped through them, the next lap I came through, they wouldn't respawn. But the next lap I came through, the last lap, then they respawn. So that was a little bit of a weird hiccup there. And it did make my progression in that a little harder because I had to go through a second lap without boost rings. And it's not like it took too long to respawn because I did test this several times where sometimes it would respawn and sometimes it wouldn't. So that was the only big progression bug that I had, but I still was able to get through it. It wasn't like completely halted my progress. The other bug was that when you're on the Planet Destroyer spaceship, I forget what its name is, the Planet Deterlizer or whatever it's called, there are these planets that float. You can luckily break them, but the graphical distorts itself in a weird way, and it completely can almost smear the entire screen. I think I recall this on PlayStation 4 as well, but I can't quite remember. It's been so long. And thankfully you can break these, and it gets rid of that smear, stretch out look, and at least you could break it. But that was the only two bugs I had the entire game. The game ran great. Some might have a problem that the game's only at 30 frames per second. And I do admit, after playing a game after 60 frames per second and jump into this, it was a little jarring. But over time I got used to it, and it didn't bug me. I totally forgot the game was at 30 frames several times. So it doesn't really affect the game all that much. The game is still great and still phenomenal to be on your shelf, and I'm really glad the game worked flawlessly on the PlayStation 5. It's well worth it to be on your shelf. Again, I don't know exactly what this 1.09 update is fixing. Maybe those few little things I just pointed out, but overall you don't really need it. It was no issues at all, and I was still unlocking trophies, so you can't pass this up. The only problem is as I said, it doesn't really tie itself well into the sequel, A Rift Apart, and again, it definitely was just to try to find a way to make a movie game out of their movie they were trying to make. I actually never saw the Ratchet Clank movie, so I don't know if it was good or bad, but it's still a fun game. I look at it as some spin-off multiverse kind of style, if you will, and it still plays great and real fun. You should not pass it up. So like always, I will include links down in the description if you're interested in a copy. As I said, no issues, no problems, still unlocking trophies, and I still had a blast playing this game. The combat loop and the progression of the game never gets old. I still love Ratchet & Clank so much to the day I first played them till now. So, in my personal opinion, this is a must pick up for your collection. So like always, thank you all so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next unboxing video. Bye-bye!